Everybody dies, don't they? Everybody come back, don't they?
10. Miss Tasmin Fitzgerald at the Spanish riding school. I queued outside the Spanish riding school, glad of my coat as the June weather had turned chill. The Viennese around me shivered in their thin post-war clothes, clerks, mothers, pensioners, all hoping for an hour's relief in the company of horses. I felt almost guilty in my good wool, but not guilty enough to wish it away. Christian was meant to meet me there. I'd wanted to see him alone to talk about Wilhelm, but of course he was late, perhaps deliberately so. He had ensconced himself in some grubby little hotel, and I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of seeing me perched beside him on a sagging mattress while he smirked at my discomfort. Better to choose somewhere on my ground where I felt at ease. The riding school suited me perfectly, and I told myself I didn't care whether it was his cup of tea or not. In truth, I hoped he'd see what I saw, the life, the gentleness, and be moved by it. I don't know why. I glanced at my watch. He might be drinking already, or simply amusing himself at the thought of me waiting. I told myself I didn't care. The truth was, I minded very much, which made me resent him all the more. In the end, I bought my ticket and walked up the steps into the riding school on my own. If he showed up at all, he would have to pay for himself. The riding school was cool and elegant, all pale plaster work and tall columns, chandeliers glimmering faintly above a floor of fresh sawdust. At one end stood the imperial box, empty now, the black eagles flown forever. I climbed to the upper gallery and leaned over the cold stone balustrade. From here the arena looked a solemn oval waiting to be brought to life. I could smell the horses before I saw them, warm, sharp, and unmistakable. The scent carried me back to childhood, to my own horse, and to the secret freedom he gave me. In that cold house where everything was proper and correct, and the grandfather clock beat away our silences, riding was the one thing that made me feel alive. Horses were breath and muscle and heat, not rules and ticking order. The horses entered in line, taking up their positions under their rider's command. They were perfect, only the flare of a nostril or the quick roll of an eye betraying the energy beneath. I resented the men in their brown coats and bicorn hats for the way they restrained that strength. My father always said you had to dominate a horse. These riders probably thought the same. I never had. The Lipizzanas walked backwards, they pranced, they spun through their paces. I watched, absorbed, until one rider slipped his horse a piece of sugar. The horse crunched it with something like a wink, and in that instant the whole performance altered. Man and horse, men and horses were not adversaries after all, but companions. It wasn't about domination, it was about love, the love living things can feel for each other. Emotion was never far from me these days. I felt tears sting and shook my head. Last night's alcohol wearing off, I told myself, cheap sentiment. But still I meant it, man and horse, bound together, sharing the same fate. And then Christian was there, sitting beside me. I knew it was him without looking up. How long he'd been there I couldn't say, but I was glad I hadn't noticed his entrance. Not looking up was a small victory against his vanity, against his certainty that he had me where he wanted. I kept my eyes on the horses until he was forced to call my name and touch my arm. His hand lingered longer than friendship allowed. I liked it. Too much. Cheap sentiment again. I turned towards him with my best stern look. "You're late. You knew I wanted to see you, and you're late on purpose." For a moment he looked almost ashamed. Then the mask slipped back into place, that unshakable self-confidence he wore like a uniform. What a thing it must be, to believe so completely in oneself. He had shaved and tied it himself, but the black eye patch made him look like a pirate from a boy's annual. I almost laughed, then remembered he had lost the eye, and there was nothing amusing in that. Now he looked tragic and handsome. He was still handsome, whatever he did, and he was well aware of it. But his lip was slightly swollen, as if he'd been in a fight, which he probably had. "I'm sorry," he said. It took longer to get here than I thought. I don't know the city very well." I caught the smell of alcohol on his breath, nerve tonic as he called it. That's why he was late. I studied the marks on his face. "What have you been doing, Christian? It looks like someone took a swing at you." He shrugged, almost embarrassed. That confirmed it. So, you wanted to talk about Wilhelm, he said at last. I'm worried about him. He looked oddly relieved to have the subject shifted. You think he's cracking up. He looked pretty shaky when that mad fellow Engelman started ranting in the cafe. He overreacts to little things. He looks at the end of his tether. Christian gave a small shrug. Aren't we all? In the past 3 months the world has turned itself inside out. Nothing they taught us at school means anything. Nothing I've ever known holds true. He gestured toward the horses below. The dead walk, and yet the world goes on as if nothing had changed. I bowed my head. It feels like something out of the book of Revelations. Maybe it is the end of the world, he said, and for the first time he looked shaken himself, as much in need of comfort as Wilhelm. He rubbed at his eyes. It's all fermenting in my head. I'm not even sure I'm sane anymore. I touched his arm. You're not alone. We're all in it together, the three of us. He gave a quick, dry laugh. 3 isn't my lucky number. What is? 1, of course, I said. Tough man talk, I don't believe it. He smiled despite himself. I have to work at the image. I changed the subject. How's Louise? California. That's a long way. A very long way. She wants me to join her. Why didn't you go there instead of coming here? He looked at the ground, unable to summon a clever quip. Unfinished business. I have friends I didn't want to let down. He met his eyes. You're one. Heat rose to my cheeks, but when he spoke of Louise, I could still see it in his eyes. He loved her. I was jealous and ashamed of being jealous. Tears stung before I could stop them. I turned back to the horses. He knew he'd upset me, though perhaps not why. I felt myself begin to cry. 30 years old, and too old for this kind of thing. There was no need for tears. It was 3 months of walking through horror, sustained only by my faith in Wilhelm, faith in a man who now seemed to be slipping himself. If Wilhelm lost the way, I couldn't find my way out alone. I told Christian about Rosa. He sighed deeply. Are you sure he doesn't know? I don't think so. He's so caught up in his own thoughts. I don't think he notices what other people feel. Christian gave voice to my fear. Trouble is, he was always the one who knew the way. God help us if he falters now. Mahler's Adagietto filled the room from a gramophone to accompany the horses. How Viennese, I thought. It was like stepping into a novel, and I was very sad. After a time he said in a rough, tough voice, You needn't worry about me. But I saw the boy beneath, the boy insisting to his mother that he didn't need her help with his cut knee. It was all too much. I thought about getting up and going. I even looked toward the exit steps. A man stood there, dark curls, film star smile, the sort of looks that made people trust him before they should, and they shouldn't. My stomach tightened. I knew him, and I was afraid. Christian saw my face and followed my gaze. Morello. He made to rise, but I caught his arm. If he started a fight, Morello might win. Morello strolled over, amused. Do you mind if I join you? We didn't answer, but he sat beside me all the same. Morello was their man, the one who could walk in daylight when they could not. If he was here at their bidding. Nice to see you here, Miss Fitzgerald. And you too, Christian. His Italian accent was warm, pleasant, entirely at odds with what he served. Christian gave him nothing. Morello filled the silence with small talk, asking me what I thought of Vienna. Despite myself, I answered politely. He had a gift for civility, and I was bred to respond. Christian glowered. It's strange how we meet in these cities, Miss Tasmin, said Morello, that sing-song mockery threading his voice. Almost as if it's fated. Very strange, unless you're following us. Or perhaps you are following me. His smile teased, but I noticed he said me, not us. He would not name the one he still served. Christian snarled, Get to the point. What are you doing here, Morello? I came to see the horses. Then I spotted my old friend, so I came over. Simple as that. His smile broadened, sunlit and effortless. Christian stood. Come on, Tasmin, I can't bear to be within spitting distance of him. Morello raised his brows at me conspiratorially, as if to say what a fool Christian was. Civilized people, his look implied, did not behave like that. Out of loyalty I rose, though part of me wanted to sit and listen. Just as I turned to go, Morello leaned close and said, ignoring Christian entirely, "Perhaps we might dine together, you and I. I'm sure we'd have plenty to talk about." "Absolutely not," Christian snapped. "Perhaps," I muttered. "Good," he said. "It will be a pleasure. I'll be in touch." We were desperate with nowhere to go and no cards to play. And if I met him, then perhaps Morello might let something slip. I wouldn't be foolish. I'd meet him somewhere very public and busy, and if I caught him off guard— Christian shook his head. I knew his anger. Morello laughed at him, which made him worse. We walked away. I think Christian would have pulled me out after him, but I shook him off and he strode ahead. I hurried to catch up. At the steps, I looked back against my will. Morello was watching, grinning, and I turned away quickly. He was a monster, perhaps not one of them, but their servant. Outside, Christian snarled, "Are you crazy? What the hell do you think you're doing? For God's sake, Christian, can't you master your temper? We need to be cool-headed if we're to get the better of them. Must you explode on every impulse?" He was silent a moment, and I saw again that flicker of shame. "Cool-headed," he said with a crooked smile. "You mean cool. You English always make it sound like homework." I ignored that. "Listen, we know nothing. He probably knows everything. They've led us to Vienna quite deliberately. It's time we stopped reacting and started finding out what's really going on. So perhaps I will go out with him, yes." "He might kill you," he said flatly. "If we don't do anything, and we let them lead us in their little dance, they'll lead us to our deaths next week or tomorrow. Let me take the risk. It may be the only way to get ahead of them." "I still think it's too dangerous," he said slowly. "But I see your point. We can't just be driven like sheep." He paused. "If you do go, let me be nearby." I nodded. "That sounds sensible." His face was sombre, thoughtful. "And take this. It won't stop the vampires, but it'll stop Morello." He drew an automatic pistol from his jacket and pressed it into my hand. "I've got to meet Wilhelm at the cemetery. I'll see you later." He turned and left. I looked down at the gun. It was the same Luger he'd given me once before, heavy, cool to the touch. It even crossed my mind that a pistol might serve as a token of affection. 11. Wilhelm Oderberg, Central Cemetery, Vienna. I had summoned Tasmin and Le Cozh to Vienna to help me, and they came. But the day after our meeting at the Herrenhof Café, I was tied up at the university, and besides, I had arranged another appointment with the bookseller, Schmidt. That manuscript he had shown me still haunted my thoughts, the Book of Resurrection from Tombs. I was more than half convinced it would prove to be another of those volumes that promised secrets yet yielded only clever phrases. Still, I needed to take another look. I even caught myself wondering how I might afford it, though I knew perfectly well I could not. Schmidt received me readily enough. Of course he did. He wanted a sale. He led me into the cramped office behind his bookshop in the Schreevogelgasse and unlocked the box beneath his desk. From it he drew the manuscript, which he laid before me with something of a flourish, then stood over me as I turned the pages. "This other customer of yours," I said, "does he exist?" He laughed. "But of course, Professor. A gentleman from Prague. He's in the trade himself, so he understands its value." I snorted. "Such a lot of money." "Such a lot of wisdom," he countered smoothly. "So it claims." I turned a leaf and found a passage. "He who would be born again must first die and then be buried. He must lie in the earth 3 days, and when he is again brought into the light, he must be given the blood of the living to drink." I sighed. I wanted the book very badly. "How much?" He named the same price as before. I'll think about it," I said, rising. As I reached the door, he called after me, "Don't think too long, Professor. It may be gone." The tram left me at the Simmeringe Hauptstrasse, and I walked a short distance to the Zentralfriedhof. The iron gates rose before me, severe and black, the gilded cross of the church just visible beyond. I hesitated at the threshold. Cemeteries are no longer places of rest in this city. They are archives of death, libraries of decay. Vienna buries not only its emperors and musicians here, but also its dreams, and even in the noonday sun the air carried the cold of the grave. I passed under the arch and along the avenue of linden trees. The stones stretched out in every direction, endless names chiselled into marble, each one a silence. I passed an angel whose features the rain had worn smooth, so that only the blurred outline of a face remained, memory dissolving in stone. I thought of the tarot card the hanged man dealt to me, and of Engelmann, who had spoken of corpses and dying gods. The signs were gathering again. The marble fronts loomed like stage facades, every doorway a black mouth. Even at noon, under a hard white sky, the cemetery was still a city of shadows. Among these vaults it was easy to believe that one of the dead might step forward. And then my breath caught. A figure was there, pressed into the gloom beside an ornate tomb. Its angels leaned down in judgment, their wings streaked with soot. For a moment he remained still, half absorbed into the stone. Then he shifted, and the scene altered. A match flared, sulphur bright. The glow lit the brim of a tilted hat, the edge of a cheek, the hollow curve of an eye patch. Smoke curled into the air. Christian Le Cozh stepped forward from the doorway. "How long have you been standing there?" I asked. He exhaled smoke. "Just enjoying the view." "Come on then. And what exactly are we here to do?" "We must make a systematic search of the cemetery, any sign of disturbance on any of the tombs." He looked past the gates. "It's huge. I've never seen one this big. It must be 2,000 graves." I shrugged. "So it will take a long time. The sooner we begin, the better." He followed me in among the dripping trees. A group of mourners passed us on their way out, 2 young women in black, supported by their husbands. The rest were older, late 60s perhaps, and almost cheerful, talking about holidays and the opera. I guessed the girls were the dead man's daughters, the others his friends, of an age to be used to the reaper's steady harvest. Confessions, birthdays, weddings, baptisms, funerals, the cycle goes on. Perhaps there is nothing to fear in it, yet each extinguished life is a sun gone out, the centre of its universe collapsed, and he was here in Vienna now, to hasten that end. The merciless reaper, draped in black. I had fallen silent, head down, striding along the main avenue. The smell of wet earth filled my nostrils. Beside me hung the acrid smoke of Le Cozh's cigarette. "Where do we start?" he said. He was always like this, anchored to process and the material world, never drifting. I envied his solidity. I stopped, suddenly unsure. The city of the dead pressed in on me, and I felt his presence shifting behind the trees and sepulchres. "That looks like an Orthodox church," Le Cozh pointed across the grass. "Yes, it serves the Russian community." "Why don't we start there? It's different from the rest. It might have caught his attention." So we walked over. I let him lead. Something in me shrank back, and like a dark flower a premonition opened that my time on earth was soon to end. I called it morbid fancy born of fear, but dismissed. It only coiled deeper inside me, waiting. We circled among the Russian tombs. The earth lay undisturbed. The mausoleum chains were rusted shut or else newly oiled but unbroken. None had been forced. Then it began to rain. A fine rain, under a clouded sky with no clear source of light. The marble graves seemed to glow, as if they emitted their own pallid radiance. We walked on. Le Cozh finished one cigarette and lit another. He said nothing, but I felt his concern for me. Yet he could not touch the weight that pressed inside me, heavy in gut and heart. Since I had seen him in my house, the fear gnawed without cease. We passed into the Catholic cemetery, along avenues of sepulchres shaded by dark-leaved trees. "This place is enormous. We'll never finish it." Then we came upon a funeral. I stopped, transfixed, as the priest spoke the words of the burial. For a moment it seemed he read them for me, warning me to be ready. Le Cozh flicked away his cigarette. "Come on, don't gawp," the priest intoned. "A portae infere erue, domine, anima meus." From the gates of hell, Lord, deliver his soul. The words filled me with horror. Could my soul escape the gate of hell? Liberi me de sanguinibus, Deus, Deus salutis meae. Deliver me from blood, O God, thou God of my salvation. I turned away, fighting the tide of dread. Le Cozh quickened his step too, though I doubt he caught the Latin. Our search faltered, will drained, leaving us uneasy, lethargic. He stood smoking again, worried eyes on me. I leaned against the tree, mind circling itself, unable to see beyond the knot of fear. I forced a smile. It's nothing, it will pass. I feel a little unwell. Why don't we leave? He said. Tasmin and I can come back another time. We may not have another time. He will strike soon. We must be ready. I raised my hand to my face. The fingers looked pale as bone. He sighed, lit a fresh cigarette and passed it to me. I do not usually smoke, but I took it. The acrid fumes made me cough. Supposed to help, he said. I doubled over coughing, hands on my thighs. Foolishly I drew again on the cigarette and coughed harder. Through streaming eyes I saw Le Cozh stiffen, staring over my shoulder. I straightened in a rush of fear, but it was not him. It was the priest from the funeral. He spoke to Le Cozh as though they were old acquaintances. So you've come here to find her, and to go on in your life of sin. Already you are half consumed. If you sup with the devil and drink his wine, you will fall into his hands. Le Cozh flushed, embarrassed and angry at once. His reaction made me uneasy. For a moment the thought struck me that he had crossed over to them. Fear outweighs reason, and the suspicion seized me. What does this man mean, Le Cozh? He shook his head but avoided my eyes. Nothing, I don't know who he is. The priest turned to me, his face bright with unholy glee. You are not like this one, who has fornicated with the Lamia. Le Cozh, what is he talking about? The priest pressed on. Tell him of your shame. Le Cozh rubbed his forehead, defiant as a schoolboy caught out. At last he spoke, still not meeting my eyes. The other night I was in a bar. One of them came in, a woman I hadn't seen before. I'd been drinking. I tried to leave, but every time I reached the door, she was there ahead of me. I gripped his shoulders. Was it Margaret Vesey? No, another. She did something to me. I wasn't in my right mind. Were you drunk? A little. I think she drugged me. Anger flared in me. This drinking is your weakness. You must master it before they destroy you with it. He looked wretched. Sometimes I just want to let go, to stop struggling. She was beautiful. The blood, the wine, the river, all mixed together. I wanted to flow away, not to die, but to dissolve. Her kisses promised sorrow and peace, death's peace, and I would have gone. But I didn't, because he came in. He nodded towards the priest, who grinned like a maniac. So yes, I'm supposed to be grateful. The priest twisted his stole in his fingers. I saved your body, but the Lord saved your soul, sinner, by driving away that daughter of Lilith, Adam's first wife, the seductress. I preserved your soul for the fires of purgatory. For that you should be grateful. Fanaticism gleamed in him. I turned back to Le Cozh. Weak, yes, but not a traitor. I had suspected him once before in London and had been wrong. The priest began muttering, chanting. Then war broke out in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. And I thought with dread that he was glad they had come to Vienna. Le Cozh flicked his cigarette stub onto the gravel. Fuck this guy's crazy. He turned and strode away. I hurried after him, my voice unsteady. Christian, I cannot face them alone. He spun back to me. Tears streaked his cheeks, though his voice was hard. Do you think I'd be here if I ever meant to leave you to them? Our only comfort, I said softly, is in each other. He scrubbed at his face with the back of his hand. Fuck that priest, he muttered. What an asshole. Strangely, his fear strengthened me. Shared, it was diminished. He lifted his hat, raked his fingers through his hair. I don't know where I am, Wilhelm, or where I'm going. That's the problem. His pale face, half shadowed by the eye patch, looked worn to the bone. Nor do I admitted, but perhaps that is the first step to wisdom. He offered me the cigarette packet. I shook my head. We both laughed briefly, like men reprieved. Then I said, "Come, let us continue our search." A shaft of sunlight broke through the clouds, running across the grass like water. Le Cozh lifted a hand to shield his eyes. For a moment he seemed crowned with light. "Sure," he said quietly, "let's get looking." The priest had followed us. He stood just behind, listening, as though he were one of us, though how could he understand? "She's not here," he said abruptly. I turned on him. "What do you know of them?" "I know nothing of the woman, only that I have tracked her, and she is not in this place." "Where then? Heitzing? Kahlenberg?" He smiled with a fanatic's relish. "Follow me, and I will lead you to her. Despite your sins, by the virtue of our Lord, you shall be Christian soldiers." The idea delighted him. He dreamed of a holy war, and we were his conscripts. Anywhere else, such talk would have earned him a place in the asylum. But here in Vienna, we believed him. We must have looked like a ready-made army. "I don't like it," Le Cozh muttered, weariness in his voice. "Listen, Father." "Father Fleischmann," he corrected. "Fine. Then just tell us where she is and go back to your mass." "Without my direction, you will be cut down like grass." I steadied myself. However vile the man, he might know something. "Father Fleischmann, why don't we go for a coffee and discuss this?" His thin smile returned. "You would trick me. I expect that from the impure, but I will come with you, not to leave you, but to keep you. We must prepare with a vigil." I sighed. If he truly knew something, then I must go with him. Outside the gates we caught a tram, hanging onto the straps as it jolted through the streets. Le Cozh tried without success to wring from Fleischmann the woman's whereabouts. This new female vampire might be a recent creation. I pressed him for details. "She was young," he said. "Pretty. 20 when she died, I'd guess. Dark hair, brown eyes, slim. Now her skin's pale as bone, lips red with someone else's blood. She called herself Rosenrot." "You will sleep at our house from now on," I told him. "You cannot risk being alone at night." He smirked. "That will ruin my social life." I ignored it. "The sofa will have to do. Rosa will make it comfortable." "You said you saw him in your house," he countered. He was right. None of us was safe anywhere. "I'm fine in my hotel." Fleischmann gave us a glance of cold contempt. In his eyes, he was saved, we were damned. For him, the world held only black and white. At length he mentioned for us to get off. We were near the Belvedere. He led us down a side street to a church and paused at the door, beckoning as though we were his parishioners. Inside, coloured light pooled in broken mosaics on the floor. I smelled old wood and prayer books, wax and incense baked into the stone. Gilded Christs and painted Madonnas peered from shadowed corners where candles flickered, and then another scent reached me, subtle at first, roses, a holy fragrance, not what I had expected from Father Fleischmann's church. Le Cozh slouched onto a pew while the priest busied himself at the altar and went into the vestry. I joined Le Cozh on his pew. He leaned closer. "What's happening? Is he planning to lead us to the vampire now?" I shrugged. "He is far from sane, but if he brings us to something, it is worth our time. Searching the cemeteries will take forever. It may yet prove he knows nothing." Le Cozh shook his head grimly. "No, he knows her. He drove her off. I can swear to that." We waited while Fleischmann worked unseen in the vestry. At last Le Cozh gestured towards the altar. I thought I was finished with all this baloney. Fleischmann returned from the vestry, vested for Mass. He began the preparation with confident voice. "In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, Amen. Introibo ad altare Dei." He crossed us, a man happy in his work. Like machines we conformed the way we had as children, as our ancestors had for centuries. Habit guided me. And yet in that place, no matter how unbalanced the celebrant was, it felt right. The scent of roses thickened until it pressed me to my knees. "Cleanse my heart and lips, Almighty God, who cleansed the lips of the prophet Isaiah with a burning coal." A terrible tension seized me, as though punishment hovered overhead. If it was true, if any of it was true, then God was love. I had loved my wife, my children. Why should I be struck down? Surely it was his will that I oppose these dark ones. Fleischmann summoned us to the altar rail, and we went like small boys, who the day before he suffered took bread into his holy and venerable hands, and with eyes lifted to heaven, to you, O God, his almighty Father, giving thanks, he blessed, broke, and gave it to his disciples, saying, Take and eat, all of you, for this is my body. He placed the host in my hand. I swallowed it at once, dry, waxy, not bread at all, and yet exactly as I remembered it, as if this instant were eternal, outside time. I dared not look up, in case the crucified Christ would return my gaze. Then the chalice, Take and drink you all of this, for this is the chalice of my blood, the new and eternal testament, the mystery of faith, which shall be shed for you and for many unto the remission of sins. I felt it before I saw it. Above and slightly behind Fleischmann light gathered, not a figure at first, but a radiance, as if the gilding of an icon had slipped its frame and poured into the air. Then form emerged within the glow, still, solemn, wings poised as if painted, yet alive. Time stopped. The silence deepened, until even my breath seemed an intrusion. It was an angel. Gold streamed from it like a living aura, not painted on wood, but flaring into the world itself, a presence both flat and eternal, yet searing in its reality. In the name of all that is holy, I speak truth. I have seen darkness, and I have seen light. Warmth bloomed in my chest. Comforted by this world-breaking vision, I knew at last I was neither wholly light nor wholly dark. I lowered my eyes into the silver chalice and drank the true blood. Then the world resumed. Sweet, heavy wine washed down the dry bread. I rose unsteady. Le Cozh rose with me. If he had seen what I had seen, he gave no sign. We went back to our pew. The weight on me was gone. I was filled with air. Outside, the sun slid in and out of clouds. The mad priest was indeed a vehicle of God, not the man, but the office, as I had been taught and never believed. And already the church felt emptied of what had filled it, its focus dispersed again into the wide world. Fleischmann prayed on, speaking to his God, not to us. Le Cozh exhaled a long breath. That takes me back. Must be 15 years. My mom would be pleased. I gave him a look, but said nothing. Then Fleischmann turned and smiled, thin as a blade. She lies at the Friedhof der Namenlosen, the cemetery of the nameless. I shall show you where. 12. Miss Tasmin Fitzgerald phones Morello. After Christian left me at the riding school, I wound along Rennweg to the building where the Wiener Zeitung leased space in the state printing office, solid, stone-faced, and set back from the botanical gardens by a broad street. The receptionist greeted me. Oderberg had given me the clipping about the strange lights in the central cemetery, and I waved it in front of her. She didn't speak English, but I managed to make her understand that I wanted to speak to the writer. There was no byline on the article, so with a heavy sigh she went back into the office to inquire. About 5 minutes later, a handsome young man of about 22 appeared in shirt-sleeves and braces, which I understand is de rigueur for busy journalists. His English was perfect and his manner very pleasant. He made it clear that he hadn't taken the piece very seriously, though such stories of the apparently supernatural were always popular with readers. I asked where he had got his information. He said that someone in the office had heard it from a taxi driver, and that he himself had spoken to a few of the local drivers before cobbling together a story. There wasn't much to it. The drivers had been very vague about the details and laughed at the story themselves. I thanked him and left. When I got back to the house on Esslinggasse, Clara, Rosa's maid, handed me a telephone message. It had come while I'd been out talking to the journalist. After seeing him, I'd gone shopping, wanting to get something nice for Rosa. God knows it was a small enough act of kindness for someone who has just told you they're going to die and they don't want to bother their husband with the news. In the end, I got some coffee beans, the best I could find. I caught Clara with her feet up in the front room smoking the most frightful-smelling cigarette. Rosa had gone to bed. I felt a blistering surge of anger at the maid, even though she didn't know how ill Rosa was. Whether it showed in my face, or whether she had the vestige of a conscience, I don't know, but she scurried off to the table on which the telephone stood. There was a pad and a pencil there for taking messages. There was one for me. In Clara's handwriting was a number, IN16751, and the words, "Morello, please ring." I looked at it briefly and thrust it into my handbag. "Is your mistress awake?" She didn't understand my English, so I mimed sleeping on a pillow and pointed back into the house where Rosa's room was. "Ah," she said, "ja." From the half-disguised smirk on her face, the girl probably thought that I was an idiot for not speaking German. When I'd last seen him, Wilhelm had told me Rosa would be fine, that it was only another of her headaches. "It's nothing serious, she gets lots." I'd said nothing, but thought that though he didn't know it then, he would remember saying that to me for the remainder of his life. Clara was still hovering, as if she thought that because I was foreign, or a little odd, or both, I wouldn't mind her sitting down and reading the paper. She was wrong. I looked up. "Haven't you got work to do?" She shook her head, though surely she had enough English to understand, even from my tone alone. "Arbeit?" I said. That she understood. She turned on her heel with all the flounce of a duchess. And when she'd gone, and after I had checked that Rosa was asleep, I had nothing to distract me from thinking about Morello. He had telephoned me. He had done it at their behest. He did everything for them. But unlike them, he was human, and I might get the better of him. I thought of what Christian had said, that he wanted to be nearby, but then I thought that because I had to act quickly, that might not now be possible. At least I had his gun. I picked up the telephone and spoke to the operator in my pidgin German. The numbers were relatively problem-free, and I heard her connect me to someone at the other end. My heart skipped a beat, but I knew what I was doing. Morello guarded their coffins in daylight. He was the key to their destruction. Eventually Morello answered. "Hello? It's Tasmin Fitzgerald here." "Miss Tasmin!" A pause, as though he had not expected me to ring. "I'm pleased you called. I'm only following up your suggestion. You talked about meeting." "Of course." "Would you like me to come round to Professor Oderberg's house?" I blurted. "No, good God! On neutral ground. A cafe, perhaps, in the Innere Stadt." "Fine. What about the Café Central? You know it?" "No, I don't know Vienna terribly well. It's famous. The great literary stars of the city meet there. Right up your street." His English was good, right down to the slang. "It's on the Herrengasse, not too far from the Schottenkirche. I can meet you outside the church. It was founded by Irish monks, perhaps some of your ancestors." I was a little taken aback that he knew about my Irish connections, but they knew so much about us I should not have been surprised. "All right," I said, "the Café Central. But when?" "In about an hour's time." I felt guilty. Rosa was lying ill in her bed. Still, Clara was in the house, and I had left her with Rosa this morning when I went out shopping. I wouldn't be long. I felt guilt and a little thrill. I told myself I was going because this was our best chance of success. I'd promised Christian that I would let him come with me if I went to see Morello, but he and Wilhelm were poking around tombs. Morello was vain and overconfident. He would underestimate me, and that was our opportunity. It was also dangerous, more than a little dangerous, though I doubted he would dare do too much to me in a crowded cafe in the middle of Vienna. I found Clara sulkily polishing the banister upstairs. I told her I was going out. She was utterly indifferent, whether she understood or not. I put on my coat and went outside. I walked to the Café Central through the streets of old Vienna, all that waltzing, the balls, the opera, the Sachertorte, the overdone architecture, the crusty, sugar-sweet heart of Europe that had cracked and fallen away like a broken shell of a crab. And now we had Gustav Mahler, Sigmund Freud, and Gustav Klimt beavering away amongst the ruins. It was a short walk to the Schottenkirche from Oderberg's house. I was exactly 50 minutes early. But he was there, standing outside the church door. No hat, longish dark hair in ringlets, an expensive dark brown suit, not an English cut, too stylish. He was smiling at me, an easy southern European smile. I doubted its sincerity, but still it pulled at me. I mentally resisted. Stupid thoughts flickered through my head, that he'd known I would be early, that he'd been watching me all along. Even that he might be able to read my mind. I shook my head as if the gesture itself would clear such silliness away. They couldn't reach inside my thoughts. He bowed. Grüß Gott, gnädige Frau, küsse die Hand. He brought his lips towards my hand, but didn't quite touch it. He looked up, big brown eyes, white teeth, and a seductive grin. Just Viennese manners I've been practicing. Where exactly are you from, Signor Morello? He looked amused. Italy, of course, but that was a long time ago. Then he added, and I haven't been back since the war. I wanted to know where in Italy. I wanted to learn as much as I could about him. Did you fight? I was pleased with myself for starting in such an up-tempo way. No, gracious lady, I'm not a warrior. I spent my war singing sad songs and eating fire in Lisbon, and I'm rather glad now to be in Vienna. The Austrians are still a little sore about losing the South Tyrol. I would have hated to have had a part in it myself. But if you're going to ask so many questions, let us go in and have a coffee. He offered me his arm, but I declined, and we walked side by side to the cafe. I don't know how well he knew Vienna, but he talked confidently about its history, its architecture, and which families lived in which houses. He was quite charming, but I knew who he was and why he was there. The Café Central was a loud, noisy, smoky place, but well appointed. We were shown to a table at the Arkadenhof, a high glass-roofed inner court with tall classical pillars through the middle of it. A hush of voices, the scrape of chairs, the dense smell of smoke and coffee. It was all like a parliament in miniature. The regulars had each their Stammtisch, and it looked as if they'd set up home there, writing letters, playing chess, arguing politics, entertaining their friends. It was easy to believe that Freud, Trotsky, or Musil might walk in at any moment. It was exactly the sort of place where men who thought too much came to waste their lives. Clever faces bent over notebooks, the air heavy with arguments nobody sensible would bother with. Very Viennese, very pointless. The waiter who served us was tall and imperturbable, with the grave air of a diplomat. He placed our menus down as if conferring a document of state, and when I hesitated over my order, he raised an eyebrow, a silent rebuke. Their reputation for severity was well founded. One had the sense that they tolerated patrons only because civilization required it. Rather conservatively, I ordered a mélange, and Morello had something dark with some kind of liqueur in it. After the waiter had gone away, he said, "You were questioning me about my courage, I believe." "What? Did I fight in a war and all that nonsense?" I snorted. "Courage? Don't flatter yourself. You're a greedy opportunist and worse. But why did you want to meet me?" "To corrupt you," he laughed. "At least you're honest." I didn't laugh back. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table, palms up. I noticed a thin white scar through his upper lip. I'd seen it before. "Your lip," I said. A duelling scar?" I knew he wasn't from that social class, so I suppose I was teasing him. He shook his head and looked straight into my eyes. I glanced down. "No," he said, "an accident during a performance of sword swallowing." I raised my eyebrows. "Seriously? I did bleed a lot, but the audience went home satisfied. Most of them only came to see if I'd injure myself." "Were you in a circus?" "No, I prefer to work alone. I was a street performer." "Not now?" "I don't do much fire-eating these days." "Neither do you work alone." "You'd be surprised how much time I spend on my own." The banter was irritating. I wanted to speak plainly about things. I said, "Why do you work for them?" "Them? You know who I mean." He grunted. He studied the palm of his hands as if distracted by the lines that told his future. Then he took a sip of coffee before looking up, once again straight into my eyes. "I know." This time I held his gaze. "What are they? How did you become involved with them?" "Which question would you like me to answer?" "The first." "Very well. They are symbols." I wasn't having that smoke and mirrors stuff. "I'm not particularly intellectual, Signor Morello. You'll have to explain what you mean." He sat back in his chair, seemingly relaxed. "They are symbols of darkness, evil, empty things. And I can answer your second question as well. You see, they come from within, not from outside at all. That's how I came across them. I looked too deeply inside myself. I was looking for me, but I found him." It was exactly the kind of nonsense they talked in Vienna. Rubbish dressed up in symbols. I had no patience for it. I said, I find it hard to believe that you can let them go around doing what they do without feeling some remorse. They are quite literally monsters. Don't you want to stop them? I felt I was speaking like a child, all simplicities and superficialities, while he spoke of symbols and archetypes, things that slip between our fingers like water, creatures alien to this waking world, yet familiar from dreams and nightmares. I couldn't read his expression when he said, "You make it seem so simple, as if we were talking about burglars or house thieves. It cannot be thought about the same way. It cannot." Then he leaned forward. "Yet that's why I wanted to see you, to help me stop them." "I wish I could believe you." You can? What proof of good faith have you?" "None." "Then I don't believe you." "As you wish." "You have to do something to show me you're telling the truth." He changed tack. "You wanted to know why I became an accomplice to such wickedness, why I myself am evil. I didn't say you were evil. I have acquiesced to evil. I have done questionable things. That makes me guilty. Do you want to hear my story?" "Maybe." I paused. He was almost certainly lying. This was some new trick. But if he could be won over, if there was the slightest chance he was telling the truth, I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "It's all to do with my childhood, you see. I keep up with psychoanalysis, so I know why I am as I am. I read it in a book. With a little work, I managed to get the theories to fit. My mother didn't love me. My father was a sea captain, a brutal man with a big belt who never said thank you or good morning or how are you today. He just talked with the belt." He was mocking me. "My mother was a thin woman and rather insecure, who always wanted to get on my father's good side, but never could, because he didn't have one. And of course, that only made her all the more insecure, like a mouse trying to climb up the wheel in its cage, but the wheel just turns." He smiled faintly. "From where I sit now, I can afford to be sympathetic, but not being coy, I killed them both. Ultimately, they annoyed me." He let that hang. I knew the shock showed in my face, so he carried on easily. "My grandmother was devout, went to mass every day, but people whispered she was a witch. She told me vengeance belongs to the Lord. I noticed he was falling behind. Things were getting untidy. So I helped him out. After that, I had to leave home." It was glib. He spoke as if he were recounting a joke, yet the way the bitterness crept in told me at least part of it was true. I played along. So you went to Lisbon, via a couple of other places. I spent years under the bottom of life's dustbin. That's where you find the wet black things. They say there's honour among thieves, and the prostitutes have a heart of gold. 2 lies. They're ruined people. I lived among them. I wasn't one of them. I had the luck to be born to a good Catholic family. "But surely you must aspire to a life not filled with all that," I said. "Nobody could enjoy such things. Once I had nearly everything I wanted. Now I don't. And yes, violence gives pleasure. It's very stimulating to kick a man in the face and keep kicking him until you know he's dead." He tilted his head. "You look shocked." I tried not to, but failed. He shrugged. "It doesn't last. Afterwards, you only feel worse. So yes, I also wanted flowers in spring and walks in the wood. I wanted happiness, but I threw my chance away. Can you give it back to me? Don't patronize me. I'm sorry you're hurt. I'm even sorry if you did all the things you just said. But this is your chance to stop, to be ordinary like everyone else." He looked at me intently. "Be ordinary. That's your cure. You, of all people, offering me that. You know what they say? That the pearl of great price is hidden where no one thinks to look. And you're telling me it's in being ordinary, in fading away?" He gave a little shake of his head as though the thought amused him. What a thing to be ordinary. What a thing to ask. Yet he had said he wanted me to help him stop them. Was it another lie, or the truth slipping out between sarcasm and contempt? I pressed him. "Tell me how to defeat them." "They can't be defeated." "But we had the star silver." He looked thoughtful. "Ah, yes, the demonic metal. That too is a symbol, as much as they are. Symbols again. That's how it works. Then give me a symbol that will destroy them." He shrugged. Images and words. By names and images are all powers awakened and reawakened. It sounded like he was quoting, but I didn't know the source. Yes, there is a word, a name. Each of us has a true name. This name calls us into existence. Before we exist, it exists in the mind of God. We are created by a word. That's nonsense. I wasn't created by a word. He smiled. In archi in o logos. In the beginning was the word. Do you think that's a metaphor? What if there was such a logos, a magic word, a name that could bring things into being, and the same name could erase life again? So you mean each of them has some magic password? Say it out loud and poof, they're gone. He nodded. And I know their names, their true names. My insurance policy. How can I learn their names? He smiled. Of course. You want to know your sister's name. I don't blame you. The name she had before she was born. The name that can destroy her. My sister Margaret, who still existed in her vile, transformed form. He was right. But he was looking increasingly uncomfortable, and I suspected that his vanity had led him to say too much, to tell me things he shouldn't reveal to anyone. I suddenly felt I had an advantage. His narcissism, to be seen as wise and clever and powerful, had tripped him up. I couldn't help smiling, but I quickly controlled it. Suddenly he whispered, "You know, I have a sister." He shrugged. "Not that you will ever meet her. Nobody does." "Your sister makes sense. Does she know these names?" "Yes." "How?" He hesitated. "It was she who told me their names when I first met them. You see, my sister has the strange gift of remembering when she was God." I rolled my eyes. What on earth does that mean? He looked down at his elegant wristwatch, embarrassed or pretending to be. I was sure he'd said something he regretted. "I must go soon." He paused, as if considering asking me something. I leaned forward, waiting for him to reveal more, but he caught himself and said nothing. I sat back, composed. "Perhaps we can meet again. I think it would be useful to continue this dialogue." He smiled. "And what would Monsieur Le Cozh think of us meeting again?" I shook his head. I don't know what you mean, unless you think that he might be concerned for my safety." Despite the words, I flushed, and he saw it. "Well, I wondered whether he might be jealous of our little tete-a-tete." More firmly than I intended, I said, "No, I don't think so." Morello had brushed aside his own troubling thoughts now and was laughing at me. "Good. I'm pleased there's nothing between you. You deserve better than him. Monsieur Le Cozh is a friend of mine. I prefer if you didn't insult him in my presence." Morello must have heard the astringent tone in my voice. He observed me quietly for a second or two, then said, "Very well, I see." And I knew he had sized up the situation between Le Cozh and myself. He had pinned me to a board, not as some rare butterfly, but as a drab moth, the sort you brush from a curtain and forget. To him it must have seemed pathetic, and in knowing this weakness of mine, he was stronger and I weaker. Before I could stop myself, I said, "Christian Le Cozh has showed me decency and human kindness. He's an honourable man, whatever you think of him." Morello got up to go. Then, as an afterthought, he said, "Just to be balanced, next time we must broaden our discussion. Let me tell you more about the pleasure of evil, because I think it's something you should give serious consideration to. Because, let's face it, being a good girl hasn't really paid off for you." I said, "I think you're very unhappy and confused." He smiled. "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." "But you don't reign in hell. You serve even there." He smiled wryly. "Touché. As I said, I must go. But we'll meet again. I'm sure you can find your own way home. Don't worry about me." "Ah, but I do. And with good cause. You should come and sleep with me. I'd keep you safe. For a while, anyway." I was speechless. I found myself stuttering. Sleep with Morello? He looked as though he meant it. "Of course not," I snapped, angry to cover my embarrassment. Angry still that he had seen me pause and might think I'd considered it. I examined my coffee cup, fingers suddenly gripping the fine handle. I was blushing. I looked at the tablecloth anywhere but at him, and when I looked up again, he was gone.
Everybody dies, don't they? Everybody come back, don't they? Isn't that so?
You tried to get into the locked drawer today, didn't you?
How do the dead come back, Mother? What's the secret?